x'jiġi l-ewwel fi spazju sagru, l-ispirtu jew l-ispazju. Il-perit ċelebri Richard England jistħarreġ ir-relazzjonijiet bejn l-ispiritwalità u l-ambjent fiżiku f'taħdita oħra mis-serje Architecture Alive, sensiela ta' taħdidiet minn periti magħrufa dwar l-arkitettura u d-disinn.
One of the problems, obviously, is trying to condense nearly 60 years of architecture into a 45-minute talk. But I shall, first of all, try to give a few definitions, both of architecture and architects. And I think it is important that I point out that, to me, architecture is not really a profession, it's a vocation. My father was an architect, and then, as William Blake correctly says, we become what we behold. Malta, its stratification of this heritage of architecture from Neolithic times through the great architects of the period of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem, and the British overlay, that together with the vernacular architecture, this wonderful expression of the maximum utilization of minimal resources, which of course are solely the stone in Malta, these are what I assimilated and had tried always to produce an architecture which belongs specifically to its place, but also to the zeitgeist of the age. I was particularly privileged to have studied in Italy after my university days in Malta in the studio of the great Italian architect designer Gio Ponti. And there I was able to be in touch with the great period of architecture of the 60s, with architects like Carlo Scarpa, Luigi Moretti, Michelucci, and a handful of others, which I think at that period was the golden age of architecture in Italy in the 20th century. And these people were my mentors, but specific mentors were, apart from Ponti himself, was Basil Spence, the great architect from England who lived in Malta and had designed Coventry Cathedral. He taught me about drawing, he taught me about making buildings, and the great British artist Victor Passmore, who also lived in Malta, and from whom I learnt two great important factors in the philosophy of my architecture: the harmony of opposites and the way one eliminates the non-essential. We shape our buildings, but our buildings after that shape us. So it is the onus of the architect to try and design spaces which lift the spirit. So I was looking for a series of perhaps more gardens and outside areas where, in a way, one was thinking of the literary authors like Ben Okri, like Italo Calvino, like C.S. Lewis, who described these wonderful sort of utopias or Arcadias. And I was trying to translate those literary works into manifest architectural buildings. The most difficult task for an architect remains that of designing a church, because here you are tackling the measurable against the immeasurable. You're trying to actually create a space which somehow reflects an aspect of divinity, not an easy task by any means. So I think that not only has the architect, in the making of a sacred space, use all his particular qualities and expertise, but he needs to extend that with what I would call a touch of an element of faith. Students in the architectural course, or in any course, are not meant to become architects or lawyers. They're meant to become university graduates, which is a completely different thing. So in regards to architecture, and I think, I'm not sure you can teach architecture, but you can learn architecture. Important today is that young architects still remember the importance of drawing. Whatever technological aids we have, the bridge between mind and paper is still best crossed by the hand. I think it would be fair to say that you only start living once you discover something you're prepared to die for. This many years of architecture, I think I could sum up my basic philosophy in 2 quotes. In terms of sacred architecture, C.S. Lewis says, "I was building not a ship in my bottle, but I was building a lighthouse." That is what I attempt in the sacred buildings. In all other buildings, I remind myself of the words of the great Argentinian writer Jorge Luis Borges, who said, "My business is to weave dreams." And ultimately, the words of playwright Tennessee Williams, who said, "I don't want reality, I want magic."